Ange Matthews is an investor, personal finance expert, speaker, and the CEO of the Happy Investor Method. Her goal is to make investing and personal finance accessible and fun for all. As an experienced investor with nearly 20 years of experience, she has supported thousands of individuals through workshops and one on one coaching. A first generation investor, Ange was initially making $40,000 a year and had six figures in debt. She then taught herself how to generate seven figures of passive wealth through responsible money management. It's amazing. Her approach is not only happy but effective. Since then, she has used her investments to become a hotel owner, real estate investor, angel investor, and shareholder in 89 plus companies. Her mission is to help others do the same. Welcome, Ange. We're so happy to have you on the Exit Interview podcast.
Thank you so
Thank you
much for
so much
having
for
me.
having me.
Yeah. So let's start with the beginning. Take us back to your early career. You started at Goldman Sachs as an analyst. What drew you into finance in the first place?
I'd love to
I'd love
say
to
that what
say
drew
that
me to
what drew me to
finance is my
finance
love
is
of
my love of
numbers, but it
numbers, but it
actually
actually
wasn't.
wasn't.
It was my love
Of
of money.
course.
And so I had a commitment to, growing up lower middle class, if not lower income bracket. I
Mhm.
always knew that I wanted to have a better lifestyle, a better life for myself, for my kids, and for my family. And so
Yeah.
I thought, well, I might as well go and work for the best investment bank out there, which at the time was Goldman Sachs, because I
Course.
thought they would teach me how to make money.
Yeah. Amazing. And so, what did you learn about wealth in those institutions that we're also familiar with on Wall Street?
It's really
It's really
interesting
interesting.
because the happy investor method probably would not have existed if I didn't
Mhm.
go to Wall Street first, because initially they tell us that you need a guy, an advisor, someone. And I always saw the need for that until I got there. And I realized that unless you have a substantial amount of worth, they're
Mhm.
not really going to pay a lot of attention to you. It's almost as if going to private school versus going to public school, seeing
Yeah.
what those ratios look like, it's completely different. And so for
Yeah.
me, when I started my career and going to investment banking, I originally knew that I'm doing this because I want to get a view into the world that no one really talks about. At the time,
Yes.
I was one of three students from my
Wow.
university to get a position at Goldman. And I was the
Incredible.
one who was the philosophy major. So I really didn't have a numbers background at all. I tell people if
Yeah.
I am qualified to do anything at the basic, it's to teach and to pontificate and to break down
Yeah.
complex topics. And I think that's what really helped me to understand that there's a lot of wealth out here. And that's what working at Goldman and even working at Ralph Lauren doing budgetary finance, it showed me there is
Mhm.
trillions of dollars and individual people have billions
Mhm.
of dollars, and
Right.
there's nothing that separates them from me, there's nothing that separates me from you. We all are created with the same genetic makeup,
I
and
love that.
awareness is what gives you the ability to kind of dream. So I always think that those days early on in my career gave me the ability
Mhm.
to dream about what I wanted in the future.
Yeah, I love that. So early on, you got this very powerful insight into, how wealth is created in these large, could even be generational wealth at these large companies on Wall Street. And I love that you've decided to spread that information to everyone, not kind of gatekeeping it and just, telling the world that this is actually possible. Um, and following your time at Goldman Sachs, like you said, you worked at Ralph Lauren, and then you also were a career coach and a recruiter. You worked for the Isha Foundation and then the New York Philharmonic. That is such a storied experience. Like I've never seen such a vast, varied, like your extents are so incredible. So, what did you learn from doing and specializing in so many different avenues in life?
Well, it's so interesting you say that. It wasn't until very recently that I realized that I had such a varied career. And it was because I was speaking to a younger cousin of mine, and she's, saying, Ange, you've come such a long way from how I've seen you grow up. And yet you're one of one of our most successful family members. And I think even though it might seem as if it's a really varied career path, I was always seeking an answer, and I always had a
Mhm.
means to an end. And so whether I was working at the New York Philharmonic, that was with sales, because I always understood that I'm going to either have to own my own business or I'm
Mhm.
going to have to invest. And I decided to do both. But how are you supposed to own a company if it freaks you out every time going into public and public speaking? And so I got a
Yeah.
sales position so that I can practice learning how to sell, how to put myself out there, how to connect with
Wow.
people. Because prior to that, I was the most closeted introvert ever. And I figured, well, if my paycheck relies on me to speak and have a conversation, I'm probably going to do it. So
Yeah.
every time I had a role, it was to prepare me for the Ange Matthews that I am now. I always knew, I didn't know I'd have a company teaching it, but I knew that
Mhm.
entrepreneurship would be the path. And I also
Yeah.
knew that I was trying to get as much money as I can to
Mm.
invest as much money as I can. In those
Yeah.
early days, I just Googled, how do you become rich? And it
I
literally
love
said
it.
on like the 10th page, you're going to have to either be an entrepreneur and control
Mhm.
your wealth and the flow of wealth to you.
Yeah.
But where most people go wrong when they're first generation millionaire is that they don't reinvest it.
Mm.
And so I did
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. And now you're teaching that with the Happy Investor Method. I love that you talked about being an introvert because I can totally relate. I'm one too. And I had to really put myself out there and know that, like you said, wealth is tied to how much you can sell, right? And so when you know that, you have to do whatever it takes to, um, improve those speaking skills or communication skills and the ability to convince someone, right? That's like, um, directly tied to how much money you're going to make. And so it makes total sense. You also talked about public speaking, and that reminds me of something you mentioned in, I think, an Instagram reel earlier about being in the right rooms and networking. And it reminded me of this quote that I heard by Cheryl Mackessack, which is, persistence is staying in the room when no one wants you there. And I really resonated with that. Have you ever felt like there was a time when you were in a room and you felt that way? How did you deal with that?
It's really easy to feel that way, especially if you're in a industry that's not typically welcoming or seemingly welcoming
Mm-hmm.
of things that you typically identify with. And so for me as a woman, as a person of color,
Mm-hmm.
I consistently saw how lonely it is to be in a room. And I would step in a room and my nervous system would tell me, you don't belong here, simply because I didn't see other people that looked like me there,
Yeah.
especially even around age or
Mm-hmm.
not having a traditional background. And I see this all the time still around investments and the investing space.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that keeps me there is knowing that the next person coming into the room is going to feel so much happier when they see me there. And it
Yeah.
makes me stay there a little bit longer than I want to, because I keep thinking, what if somebody else is about to come and they need to see that it's safe to be here? Now, this
Yeah.
doesn't mean that the rooms that I'm stepping into have anything against me
Mm-hmm.
or have built a system where I'm not welcomed. They probably have, for the mere fact that I'm in the room
Yeah.
means that I'm welcomed in the room.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't welcomed, I wouldn't be able to enter. And I
Mm-hmm.
think having that mindset shift really changed a lot for me. And it's, well,
Yeah.
I'm in this room, I'm going to stand out. I might as well have something to say because they're going to listen regardless.
Yeah. I love that. And, you talked about the responsibility of, you know, inspiring other women who look like you and who've had similar backgrounds and showing them that they belong. And I resonate because I'm in an industry that is mostly male dominated. And it's very often that you feel that way, that you feel like you don't belong. And then you stop and think that, I'm doing this for the women that come after me and who are going to see that this is possible. So I totally totally understand what you mean. And it looks like the same is it's the same case with wealth and finance and that industry as well.
What do you
What
do?
do? I'm an architect. Yeah, I
No, I
just
know you're an architect, but what do you do when you're in a room and you stand out?
um I honestly I there's a voice that tells me to leave immediately, but I tell myself that I'm here. I have given myself an hour, so I put myself on a timer, and I say I have an hour to talk to as many people as possible, and I'm going to do it whether they seem interested or not.
I love
and
that.
and and yeah, and I think it's funny because a lot of these rooms you have to pay a fee, like $50 or something, and I'm like, hey, I invested $50. I'm here. I'm gonna make it work for me. And I think that's another strategy is maybe paying a fee and
Hmm.
knowing that you're there and you have to make it work.
I love that. I know for me, when I go into an event, I typically say I just have to meet five people. And as soon as I meet my five, so that I can create meaningful relationship later, I'm done. I don't have to stay any longer. And so that really helps me because I literally count them like, okay, that was two. Just three more, and you just got to do three more people, build a connection, and then we can follow up. And then after five, everything else is sprinkles. And usually after
Yeah.
five, I'm warmed up enough to probably pull in another 3 to 5 people.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Yeah. Just give yourself a number, right? And then start with that. Yeah. Let's, so we talked about your storied past and all your different avenues. At what point did you realize that, I need to find my footing and I need to go off and build my own thing? And when you started to kind of feel a little uncomfortable and, maybe you were thinking about the responsibility you had to your children, to creating generational wealth, at what point did that pivotal moment happen in your life?
So it's interesting. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And the last time I had a 9 to 5, I was working at a web design firm as a recruiter.
Mhm.
Again, working at the New York Philharmonic was great, but it still didn't bust me out my shell as much. And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, so next job, if I'm a recruiter, I'm going to have to talk to a lot of people because I'm
Yes.
interviewing them. And I'm
Mhm.
also an autodidact, meaning that I love to learn. And tech was really interesting to me. So I thought, what better position than to be learning from the people who are creating the technology?
Mhm.
And I loved meeting people. That was the best part of my job, and hearing their stories and why they wanted to get into a career. But unfortunately, the place that I was working for, I didn't have the best, I don't want to say relationship, but treatment. And so if you're working in
Mhm.
tech or if you're in a high demand field, with the salary comes the
Mhm.
expectation of you're willing to be here 65 hours a week. You don't have to go home. We'll feed you lunch. We'll feed you breakfast. We're going to
Wow.
make sure that all your friends are here so that you don't have to leave. And I
Yeah.
remember specifically wanting to take time off because I hadn't done it for most of the year. It must have been like September or October. And I asked for
Mhm.
time off and it got denied. And I thought to
Wow.
myself, I've given you so much of my life and you
Yeah.
couldn't even like just approve my PTO request.
Yeah.
And it just
Wow.
crushed me. And I thought
Uh-huh.
I'm never going to be in this position again where I have to get permission to enjoy and live my life. And that
Yeah.
was the little spark that made it so I'm just going to have to work my butt off so I never have to do this again. And that's
Yeah.
when I started investing, and that's when I started all the side hustles. I just knew
Yes.
that I just need to make as much money so that I can have enough of a cushion to have the
Mhm.
confidence to break free. And thankfully, because of my business acumen, because the way I structure things before moving into something else, I've never had to go back to corporate.
Wow. And at that point you were like, this is my exit interview. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the exit interview of all exit interviews.
I love it. And that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, was to talk to women and, talk about these hidden, let's call them microaggressions, but also they're not always microaggressions that happen in corporate. And the reasons why they decide to leave, because there's just no space for them, or there's no space to move up the corporate ladder, right? And I felt that when I worked for a corporate job up until a month ago. I totally felt like I just when you think about motherhood and, you see people working until 9 p.m. every day, you're like, how am I ever going to do this with a child? So I love that you touched on that. That's, would you say that that's a common reason that you've seen people leave corporate, like women, especially women of color, or just women? Yeah.
I think in general, it's a commitment to live on your terms. I think that's
Yeah.
why. I think there's a
Hmm.
lot of financial upside if you can figure it out. And so people also think, well, if I'm making this person this much money, how much
Hmm.
money am I making them if this is what they're paying me? And then you
Yeah.
start thinking, well, what if I can do this on my own and have more flexibility? I know that personally as a mom, one of the reasons why I'm an entrepreneur, why we have the happy investor method, it's specifically because I don't think I'd be able to get as much PTO days as I used, transparently.
Yeah.
Like, I travel a lot. I'm the one where if the kids have an appointment or if someone is feeling sick, it's up to me,
Yeah.
and I'll have my clients, but I structure our company in knowing that family comes first. You
Hmm.
come first and then business and then money. And so if I have to, reach out to my assistant and say, "Hey, can you just shift my appointments, 2 hours later
Hmm.
because my kid is sick?" Then our
Yeah.
clients don't mind that because that's why we're doing this. We're doing it to have
Yeah.
our own terms. Or if my kid comes up and they want to say hi to whoever I'm talking to and I'm teaching a class or meeting with one of our VIP clients, the
Yeah.
person knows to say hi because this is why I'm doing it. If I can't do it, I'm not going to have the company. And so I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
a lot of folks want more agency around their
Mm.
time, around their money, and they realize that, we went through a pandemic. A lot of folks are in the sandwich generation where they have to take care of their parents and their kids and still trying to find a sense of self. I think people are realizing that it's time for me to be work optional. It's
Yeah.
time for me to get a
Yeah.
hold of what I do with my time.
Yeah. And so are you seeing that a lot of your clients are, slowly realizing that corporate's not the path for me? I can go out and start my own business, create my own wealth, income streams, my, generational wealth, and even create the freedom and set my own times rather than having to get permission from someone to do it. Are you seeing that as a common theme with your clients?
I am. A lot of people come because we have something called the 5-year plan, and
Mhm.
it's about becoming work optional in 5 years. So, for a lot of people, if they understand how their money works, they're looking at their current retirement 401k, their old ones, which a lot of us have old 401ks from, rolling over to other
I
jobs.
still do.
A lot of us do. It's like people kind of just out of sight, out of mind. But we
Yeah.
pick up those things and we say, well, okay, well, this is how much you have. And if we're able to make this much money work at this interest rate, these are your options. And so for a lot of people, they're thinking, maybe I want to take some time off to take a sabbatical or to start a company. We'll go through the numbers and say, well, what's a responsible way to do this so that
Mm.
your quality of life doesn't drastically um, get threatened? What's a way
Yeah.
to do this so that your kids don't feel the pinch? What's a way to do this
Mm.
so that there's still money working with your investments while you're out trying to figure this new venture called your business? And so I think that's really important for people to start planning before they're ready. So many people just jump the gun. They're like, I can't take it. This is a toxic workplace. They're
Yeah.
not understanding. They're not getting my fertility journey. They don't understand that I've evolved as a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want me to be someone I'm not, and then they just jump ship. And they don't
Yeah.
negotiate what severance looks like. They don't negotiate what it looks like to give themselves an internal time frame and
Mhm.
then make their side business work before it becomes the main business. So there are a lot of things that are happening right now with people thinking about that they want to jump, they want to exit, but what we do is we help people do it in an intentional way so that they're
Mm.
not put in a really bad situation where they have to go back.
Yeah. So you give them a date saying this is when you're going to send in your resignation letter, and you know exactly, this is when you're going to be fully ready to make that transition.
Yep. I mean, we call it work optional here. And so
Yeah.
we have a program called the Wealthy Her Collective. And in it, it's so funny because everyone in the collective is just like, oh my gosh, did you hear why vet is work optional now? Or we've got Dr. Sam, who's a chiropractor, and she closed her practice and she's work optional. And so in the hallways are all these like, oh my gosh. And then someone else comes up and they're like, it's a decision you have to make. It's like, I want to be work
Yeah.
optional now. And so
Yeah.
then we'll get these messages and, folks are like, I'm ready to be work optional. Like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
that's when the plan really matters. And then it usually happens within like a couple of months to 2 years because it's just
Uh-huh.
about organization and vision.
Yeah, wow, I love that. I think I could have benefited from that when I decided to quit my job. So, this is great. Yeah, I think anyone who's listening who's thinking about, they're in this job that they've hated for so long, and or not hated, or just not happy with how much they're being paid, I think this would be a great program for them to, make that transition in a responsible way without just being impulsive and
Don't be
quitting.
impulsive.
Yeah.
Don't be impulsive. I know it's so tempting
Yeah.
to be impulsive. And, I think a lot of us have, I don't know what movie it is, but there's a movie where someone like just quits and then it like they just say like screw it, I'm out of here.
Is it
And
Office Space?
it might have been, I can't
Yeah.
remember, but it's like this very iconic scene.
Yeah.
And I want to let people know that there is a strategic way to do it. And you
Mm.
don't have to just give everything up, especially if it's a hobby. And so I always let people know if you're going to start a business and you're going to quit, um, you're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to work alongside your job to
Yeah.
start something so that when you're done with your job, you're not starting from scratch. Because when you're working in a career, someone else mandates your schedule and
Yeah.
it's very structured. But then when
Mhm.
you're an entrepreneur, you're the boss.
Yeah.
And that sounds amazing, but it could also be very terrifying because
Yeah.
no one is holding you accountable. It is just you and yourself. And if you don't show up to work that day, no one is coming looking for you saying, why did you not show up to work that day?
Yeah.
There's
Exactly.
there isn't, someone to make sure that the ball keeps rolling. And so I
Mhm.
definitely say giving yourself a structured plan,
Mhm.
giving yourself a set amount of money and saying, if this doesn't turn a profit by this date, well, what is the
Yeah.
next plan? Or I'm going to utilize, my old 401. A lot of people utilize some of their retirement when starting
Mm.
a new
Yeah.
company and a new business.
Yeah.
And I get it. But what would it look like if you prepped for that and found someone like us at the Happy Investor Method and actually said, well, this has, like $125,000 in it. What can I invest it in to make it to 200,000? And
Right.
then use that 75,000 as your own startup money,
Yeah.
just as a like general ballpark.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And rather than dipping into the 401ks, they could prepare for it financially, right? Because your 401k has much higher return on investment over time. Yeah, that I think that's a really good point. I want to quickly touch on motherhood and how that has changed your relationship with entrepreneurship, ambition. You said that one of the reasons you did this was because you wanted to find the time to pick up your kid from school, be there at drop offs, cook dinner, and just be present as a mom. And so how did you start looking at your business and wealth when you became a mother, or during motherhood?
Motherhood changed the way I saw everything.
Mm.
Before it was just me and my parents. I knew that the only people I have to take care of is myself and make sure that my parents are good to go because I am the daughter of immigrants and that's just the deal.
Yeah.
It's they sacrificed to come here and to do everything to give us a good quality of life and education, and our sacrifice is to pay that it's not that obligation back. And so up until I had kids, I thought as long as they're good, I'm good. I can just do whatever I want. And then the moment that my daughter came, I realized that, wow, someone needs me to actually survive. So I have to keep not only myself alive, but I have to keep this kid alive too. And I also kind of have to feed my husband in the background. And so there was so much responsibility. And I remember thinking at the time, do I go back to work to have more financial stability? Do I go back to work? And I thought to myself, well, because we had our investments and because I had my business, I
Mhm.
actually took a 8-month maternity leave. And
Hmm.
I went back part time when I wanted to within that 8 months. And so I eased back into what work looked like. And I think it's really important to think about this, especially if you are in corporate. What would your life look like if you could have maternity leave be where you just work 3 hours a week? You just put a pinky toe in the
Wow.
water. Because sanity
Yes.
wise, as women who are really high achieving and driven, we really actually need to put a pinky toe in the water, because just being with a kid
Yeah.
could sometimes drive you crazy. And so I love the flexibility I got because of my business. And even if my business didn't perform, I love the
Mm.
fact that I had investments in the background where we knew that we could pull from these investments if we needed to. And so I think a
Right.
lot of people, when you're thinking about mothership, a lot of people join our programs because they want to be mothers and they're trying to make space for their fertility journey. They're trying to make space
Yes.
for what would it look like if I didn't want to return back to the office. And those are
Mm.
intentional conversations. And so I love being a mom because I also got to think about, what does legacy look like, and how do I make sure that my daughter doesn't have to make the same decisions or sacrifices that I had to
Right.
make in terms of career, in terms of working extremely hard. And
Mhm.
my kids, they're going to be work optional by the ages of 26 and 29. Leah
Wow.
is 29 because we started investing a little bit later for her because we had to buy a
Uh-huh.
house and all the wonderful things. But
Wow.
I think that's where we start thinking about generational wealth.
Yeah. That's incredible. How did you invest for your kids? Was it a 529 or um
So it's interesting because I'm not entirely sure where education is going to be in the next
yeah.
20 years, nor am I really certain where my child will be in the next 20 years. A lot
Right.
of times people talk about getting into a really great college and getting into college, getting into a really great college so that they can have a really great network, a powerful degree, and get a really great job, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if they technically don't have to bring an income, then what is the purpose of a really great job, especially if they're going to it for money? If money is no longer an
Right.
issue or a question, so then they actually get to figure out what is their contribution to the planet and how can they responsibly do that. And
Yeah.
so when thinking
I love
about a
that.
529, there were a lot of variables there that I didn't really have certainty around. And so what we
Mhm.
do is we have retirement accounts for them. And with the
Okay.
retirement accounts, we've got a Roth IRA, they have regular IRAs and regular
Mhm.
brokerage accounts. And so that money that we put in there can be used for education. Even their retirement, it can be pulled out for education, whether they
Yeah.
use it for education, whether they use it for retirement. And so the point about a 529 kind of becomes non existent,
Mhm.
because it's still an investment account, but with way more flexibility and freedom. And the tax advantages are way more, especially in a Roth.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Wow. So you basically match the maximum amount every year for them with the Roth IRA. Yeah.
I max the full
Okay.
amount. And then when you put that
Yeah.
in a really great fund or a stock, um, compounded over 20 years,
Hmm.
beautiful things
Yeah.
happen.
Incredible. Is that something you help clients with as well? If they have kids, how do you make your kids work optional? That's something that I've never heard of. um, so how do they? Is that something they can opt in to do with you with your with Happy Investor Method?
So the goal is always work optional. And I love to think about it, uh, for me, for you, for us, for you, for them, for all of us. And so
Mhm.
for you, we want to think about, how do I get you work optional? Because a lot of people tend to think about their kids, their parents, their community, and they give into a cup, but they're not giving from overflow out of their cup, right? So they're
Right.
giving directly from their cup, and we're supposed to get from overflow. Once you've got yourself covered, at least on the way, you might not be work optional yet, but the the things are in place specifically for you to get there. Then we can start thinking
Mhm.
about, well, what is it to invest for our children? How do we set up those accounts? How do we,
Mhm.
if our child has special needs, how do we set up an investment account for them specifically? And then we get to do our community. So once we're covered, once our children or our parents are covered, then we get to think about, how do we do a donor advised fund? How do we have a
Yeah.
charitable investment vehicles so that we can get tax deductible money that we're contributing to make the world a better place. And so we
Yes.
teach all of that. And it's kind of crazy how much someone can change in just 1 year. I know it sounds a lot right now. And you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds like pretty overwhelming. But we've got clients that have been with us for 7 years. We've got clients that have been with us
Wow.
for months. And it's a
Yes.
long-term relationship because as your money grows, as you get a handle of it, you'll see that you'll start evolving. The person that you were starts
Mhm.
morphing into the person that you always hoped you'd become. And we're just
Yeah.
there right alongside with you.
That's great. I think that is so important, especially in America, where our debt stands at $1 trillion or more right now, and it kind of correlates to the fact that people don't really know how to manage their money, and this is exactly what we need, like a financial partner who is not only taking care of our funds, but also is hand in hand with us taking care of our future, right? Of our kids' futures, of our mothers, parents' futures, like you did with your mom retiring her uh, so early on, right? That was I just read that story and that was incredible. Um, so I want to go back a little bit more in time and talk about entrepreneurship. You said you've been an entrepreneur for so long, and when you were at sales jobs, you worked as a recruiter. Were there skills that you had to develop as an entrepreneur that you weren't naturally good at, and how did you do it?
So many skills you have to develop to become a successful business owner and investor.
Yeah.
And there's so much overlap actually. And so one skill specifically is learning how to speak up for myself.
Yeah.
That's
That's
a very
excellent.
important skill set because people will always teach you how to treat them. And you don't want to be a victim. You're always a victim or a hero or a bystander in any story in your head.
Yeah.
And
I love
so
that. Yeah.
and I've done a lot of transformational work to become the Ange that you see today and the Ange in the future. And so, in doing that work, making sure that I have agency over my decisions is really important and speaking up
Yeah.
for those decisions. And that comes from knowing why I'm making a decision. So, a lot of times people speak up for themselves, but they don't know why something might actually matter to them. They just think that it
Yeah.
matters, and it might actually be a subconscious desire of someone else around them that was just poured into them. So for me,
Yeah.
I had to know that I didn't want to be a lawyer. My parents really wanted me to be a lawyer. They thought my sister was a doctor. I'm supposed to be the lawyer. Classic immigrant dream
Classic
achieved.
immigrant.
My
I,
brother, funny enough, was going to be the architect.
of course.
And I just knew that I didn't want to be a lawyer. When I interviewed
Yeah.
most lawyers at the time, like 15, 20 years ago, I didn't know any
Yeah.
successfully happy lawyers. So there's a reason why the
Right.
company is called Happy Investor Method, because happiness is a foundational principle of mine. So I'd never met a happy lawyer. And
Me
when
neither.
they
Yeah.
said you're going to be able to make decisions, I would have to be partner and I would have to, all these years, it didn't make sense. So as,
Mhm.
someone who's going on your own path, you're going to have to be okay with breaking some eggshells and going
Yeah.
against the norm and advocating for yourself. And the other thing that
Yeah.
you want to do is of course have your own agency, speak up for yourself, know what it is that you want to actually speak up and say and defend
Mhm.
yourself, but you're also going to have to be open to support. I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that I struggled with initially was knowing that I I probably could do this on my own, but
Mhm.
the quality in which I will get to the finish line might not be what I expect if I do it on my own. And what I mean by that is having support is a value add, not something that's taking away. And I
Right.
realize the higher I go, whether it's through entrepreneurship, whether it's through investing, whether it's through as a mother or a wife, it
Mhm.
how much support I'm willing to take on to get to Ange 3.0 and 4.0,
Yeah.
it's directly tangent with how successful I am at that. And so an
Yeah.
example would be asking for support with the kids, knowing that it's okay for me to travel and go to a conference. It
Mhm.
it's okay. It's okay to hire someone to come in the mornings and help to clean before the cleaners. Like it's okay to have support. It's okay to have a business coach. It's okay to take a course on money or different types of
Mhm.
investments, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's helping me get to my end goal, which is how I see myself. And so I think that's also a really big factor in terms of people who are successful versus not. The numbers aren't good
Yeah.
for entrepreneurs and for business owners. Most
Hmm.
businesses fail within a year, and even
Yeah.
more fail within 5 for those that survive. And our company's 9
Yeah.
years old. So
Wow.
I'm pretty sure a lot of that is because I've had coaching along the way, and I've also had
Yes.
money that wasn't dependent on this company. Like,
Yeah.
I'm good regardless if someone joins a program or not. And so the energy there is healthy. I'm not
Yeah.
riding on my
Mhm.
business to put food on the table. It's I
Right.
want to do this, not I need to do this.
Right. And you would do it anyway, regardless of whether it made money or not, right? Because you're just so passionate
Yeah,
about it. Yeah.
absolutely. I'm still going to be on the
Yeah.
soapbox regardless.
Yeah. And I love what you said about you interviewed lawyers, right? And you did that research before you made that decision to take that path. And I think that's a really key thing to mention, especially for entrepreneurs, because a lot of people just jump, and it's good to jump, but if you're not doing the background research that you need to determine whether this is the right path to take, you're never gonna, you might get there, but you might not be happy, like you said. You might not, it might not be something you actually want to do. And that's something you did in that path of figuring out what you wanted to do. And another common theme I'm noticing with everything you're saying is that the time that it takes from having a thought to execution is very short, and you get things done really quickly. And that's, I think, another trait that I've seen with entrepreneurs, with successful entrepreneurs and businesses that have been around for more than 5 years, right? And is that a skill you developed over time? Just execution, having a thought and getting it done, Uh,
It's really interesting. I had a job, and it's crazy. You all are probably gonna think, Ange, how many jobs did you have? So I once had a job where I worked for an online marketer, and I remember this very clear because I thought about going back and getting a 9 to 5. My dad
mhm.
had recently passed away, and I was just absolutely devastated and broken. And I knew that I didn't want to necessarily do my business because I just needed to show up for myself. And I knew that I didn't want to go back to corporate because I knew that
Mm.
they probably wouldn't care about the grief process. So I went to work part time for an online marketer.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget her telling me that what most people don't have is the ability to have a quick start trait, to just quickly start something. And she
Yeah.
looked at me and was just like, "That's not you, though. You take your time and you deliberate and you think a lot and you make sure that you have A, B, and C ready before you even jump in." But that's
Mhm.
always going to bite you in the butt because by the time you jump into A, B, and C will have effectively changed by the mere fact that you took action on A because you're putting something else
Oh,
into the equation. And
yeah.
so my B and C would be obsolete.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
completely shifted my mindset around being a quick start and being someone who plans something all the way through. And
Right.
so for me, I'm more so an iterator. I
Mhm.
know in theory it's going to be this way, but in practice it's going to be another way. So I tell our students who are looking to invest, you don't just throw thousands of dollars into an investment. You put a little pinky toe into the water, put like $100 and see what happens. It's not going
Mhm.
to make or
Mhm.
break the quality of your life. So when you're an entrepreneur, try and get one client, see what that feels like.
Yeah.
Don't just quit everything and say, I'm opening up a business and you've never had a client. Because when you have a
Yeah.
client, well, then that's when the real party starts. That's when you see, whoa, this client is very demanding, or this client doesn't have clear instructions. This is what I want
Yeah.
from my next client. This is what
Right.
I'm going to put into the SOPs. This is what I'm going to put into the contracts. Same thing
Yes.
happens with investing. Wow, this investment is crazy. Well, now I know I'm only going to invest in companies that follow these rules that I have in my
Yeah.
personality. I'm not a
Yeah.
day trader. This is how long I want it to be. Trial and error is going to get you so much further than a YouTube video, than a chat GPT, or even a
Mm.
book. You have to
Yeah.
figure out why the rules apply to you and how they apply to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think, I've been talking to a lot of people who've wanted to start something, and there's always an excuse. They're saying, I haven't done the research that I need to. I don't have a business plan. I don't have a website. Like, you don't need any of that. Just go out and, get your client, like you said, and you figure things out as you go along. Right. And I think again, when you were talking about going from thought to execution and being a quick start, like that's what uh, that's a common theme that I've been seeing amongst especially women entrepreneurs, but any entrepreneur really who, is successful. Like they keep iterating, and they keep going through the motions and figuring out what works. Like you get your first client, you put systems in place that's going to make it better for your next client, right? And that's just how it goes. Yeah, I love that. And you also mentioned having coaches, and that's, I think, really interesting because I was having a conversation with at a networking group with another designer, and um, one thing that people are always thinking about is, I just started my business. I don't have the money right now. I cannot invest in a coach, right? But maybe that is the best time. Like you said, you have to put together maybe a 6 month uh, timeline. Knowing that you're not going to make any profits, and this is part of that game plan. Having that coach and having the support system that you need. And so would you say that, what types of coaches would you recommend, like a communication coach or business coach? Um, is there a specific coach that is maybe more important than the other? What are your thoughts on that?
So it's interesting. I have a lot of coaches in my life. I call them the A team.
Yeah.
And I always tell my students, you got to have an A team. There's an A team for your money, which is like your
Yes.
accountant, your CPA. I call it independent educator. So that's me, a coach, educator. You're
Mhm.
going to need a legal person, your A team, people that are as vested as you are to make sure that you are as successful as possible. And so on the investment side, that's kind of like your A team. But then on the business side, I also have an A team, and there is some
Yes.
overlap. So on the business side, I have a business coach who specializes specifically in sales and marketing because I'm an
Yes.
introvert and I probably would literally give the whole shebang away for free because I want to help.
I
But
love
that
it.
is called a non for profit,
Yeah.
and that is not what I have.
Yes.
And so I have a business coach for that.
Yeah.
I have a hype woman, and people are like, Ange, you pay someone to hype you up? Yes, it is very lonely on these entrepreneurial streets, and
Mhm.
competition is the thief of joy. So I might look at someone who has $1 million, 2 million, $3 million. I remember this when I was starting out, looking at peers who had like $1 million companies. Granted, we're
Yes.
there now, but like, I would think that my 100K, year was nothing. And I would get
Yeah.
so depressed about it. And it was like, hey,
Oh.
50% of entrepreneurs never hit six figures,
Yeah.
like
It's a big
ever.
deal.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's important to have someone that can help you celebrate the wins,
Hmm.
because that's also important.
Yeah.
And then the last part about the team is have someone on your team who can really hold you accountable to the numbers. And so
Yeah.
if you declared, and I'm very passionate about the power of declaration. So if you declare that you want to have, $1 million net worth, well, how much by when are you going to have that? Or a $3 million net worth? How much by when are you going to have it? So what are the
Mm.
incremental wins there along the way? What is the 275,000 net worth look like? What does the 500,000 net worth look like? What does the $900,000 net worth look like? You're not going to
Yeah.
figure out how to get to a million in net worth until you break it down. And so
Yeah.
same thing goes for revenue. You have to have that, and then if you don't hit that number by the date you specified, you have to go to yourself and have an honest conversation of why not.
Yeah.
And if
Yep.
that didn't happen and you can say why not, well, then you get to go back and fix it to make it a more probable chance that it did. And so you don't necessarily initially have to have a business coach to do this.
Yeah.
You can have a friend that's an accountability partner, right?
Hmm.
You can have a group to hold you accountable. I have masterminds, I have business besties, and I
Hmm.
will say that helps. But I also
Okay.
love paying for coaching because if I'm paying you, you have to show up. If
Right.
we're just friends, technically you don't. You're just doing me a favor.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I've been trying to, as I'm growing my business, I'm also trying to, you know, uh, it's not just, you're not just giving money away. It's an investment. It's, you're gonna, if you hire someone to help make your business better, you might do double of what you thought you were gonna do, right? And so that's an investment into your business. Um, and I think anyone who's listening to this should look at it that way, that rather than, you need, like you said, you pay for a hype woman or a hype coach. That's, I've never heard that. That's incredible. I think I probably should think about doing that as well. It is really cool. And yeah, it's just someone who's, like you said, this A team is your circle and they lift you up, right? They're there to hold you accountable and to make sure you're hitting those goals and not to let a little roadblock get you down in any way, right? And so that's great. And if there was, we're coming to the end of the episode, if there was one thing you were to tell someone who's standing on the ledge, they're saying, I'm in this corporate job. I go to work at 8, I come home at like 9, I just hate it and I can't give any more to my family. And I really need to start that business that I've been thinking about for 5 years. What is the one thing you would tell them to uh, take that leap?
I would say start before you're ready so that you're ready when you actually have to start. And so if you
Yeah.
feel this passionately about it, start stacking those receipts.
Yeah.
Start getting your proof of concept. Start
Mhm.
going to networking events. Start building a name for yourself. Start building your personal brand outside of your profession. These are the
Yeah.
steps that you can take so that when you have to have that conversation with your partner, spouse, family, friends about why you're doing this crazy thing, like stepping out on your own, you have receipts.
Mhm.
You say, I created this amount of impact in this role. This is my marketing plan. This is my business plan. It's not that you have to show it to them, but it's really to show
Yeah.
to yourself because
Right.
those receipts are what you're going to need when you're up at night wondering, why did I do this again? You
Yeah.
just want to prepare for that moment. And then the other thing is you want to know that you are your ancestors' wildest dreams.
I
And
love that.
in you is
Yes.
something so beautiful that is literally becoming as we speak. And
Hmm.
you can either be a bystander and passive
Yeah.
in this thing that's called your life, or you can
Yeah.
literally get in the driver's seat and take it to the destination that you want to go. And so many of
Yeah.
us are in the passenger seat of our own lives, and you don't even realize that you're headed to a destination that you never anticipated. Or
Yeah.
you can get out of the auto, like the autopilot, get into the captain side, the pilot side, take
Mhm.
control, logically map out the course that you want to go to, get behind the wheels, and make your own decisions, your own curves, and be accountable for the destination that you land on. And once you get clear that you are going to love yourself, regardless of what that destination is, because that is your destination to be because you had control of it,
Yeah.
then you're ready to take the leap.
Wow. Incredible. Um, wow. And with that, we end this episode. Thank you so much, Ange, for coming on the Exit Interview podcast. And I am leaving with so many incredible words of affirmation, inspiration, and I'm going to take this with me throughout the week. So thank you again. And yeah, I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah. Wait. If
Oh, sorry.